During the event known as the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. was led by President John F. Kennedy, commonly referred to as JFK. JFK was elected in 1960. The Soviets were led by Nikita Khrushchev, who had succeeded Stalin in power in the USSR, starting with Stalin's death in 1953. The Cuban Missile Crisis was the closest the world has ever come to a nuclear war, and it started in 1962, when Khrushchev secretly began to install nuclear missile sites on the island of Cuba. Now, Cuba is just 90 miles away from the U.S., from Florida, and it's within range, meaning firing range, of a lot of the United States. Khrushchev wanted to counter U.S. missiles that had been placed in Turkey, because the U.S. had put missiles in Turkey that were basically aimed at the USSR. So Khrushchev wanted to have missiles placed within range of the U.S. Khrushchev also wanted to force Kennedy to promise not to overthrow Cuba's communist government. So this image is a map of Cuba, and it shows you the Soviet launch sites for nuclear weapons that the U.S. found out about when a U-2 spy plane flew over Cuba in early October of 1962. And this is one of the actual photos taken from a spy plane over Cuba of a Soviet missile launching site being built. Now on October 16, 1962, President Kennedy was shown photos from the U-2 planes of these Soviet missile sites. On October 22, 1962, Kennedy made a speech announcing to the public that weapons had been found in Cuba. Kennedy also warned that any attack from Cuba would be seen as an attack from the Soviets and would be responded to accordingly, meaning most likely using nuclear weapons. This map shows you why the U.S. responded so harshly to the Soviet missile placement in Cuba. The Soviets created launch pads in Cuba for what were basically rocket-powered nuclear weapons, and these missiles could be fired and hit the United States. If you look closely at this image, you'll see a circle outline with Cuba in the middle. That circle represents the firing range of these Soviet missiles. Clearly, a large portion of the U.S. was put at risk. As you can see from this headline, Kennedy's response to the Soviet construction of nuclear weapon launch sites in Cuba was to order a blockade of the island. And basically, a naval blockade is when you surround a place with ships to prevent any goods or people from flowing in or out of that area. And the goal of Kennedy's naval blockade was to stop construction on the missile launch sites. He wanted to stop all new weapon supplies from entering Cuba. When Kennedy announced this naval blockade of Cuba, a lot of people wondered and a lot of people worried about what the Soviets would do in response to this. This was definitely a threat to Soviet authority and Soviet power. However, on October 26th, Khrushchev agreed to withdraw the missiles from Cuba. He did this as long as Kennedy would agree to not invade Cuba. So, with this agreement, the Cuban Missile Crisis ended. After the Cuban Missile Crisis, and coming so close to nuclear war, the U.S. and the USSR decided to establish a better relationship. In 1963, a telephone hotline provided a direct connection between the U.S. capital and the USSR's capital, Washington and Moscow, to provide instant communication in hopes of preventing future miscommunications that could lead to a nuclear war. Lastly, many Soviets lost faith in Khrushchev as a leader. He was replaced in October of 1964 by Leonid Brezhnev,